Good morning or afternoon or evening, whichever it is for you. Since a lot of what we're talking about with regards to pleasure and reward, reinforcement, happiness in this section, at least this first week, is focusing on feeding, I thought it might be a good idea to give you a little bit of background, some basics on the neurobiology of feeding. And this is a good way to just slip in some of these little tidbits that would normally be more of a major part of the courses I used to teach it. So, any event, here we go. So today, before class on Thursday, we're going to go over some of the homeostatic mechanisms and talk about something we really haven't done much of recently, and that is the hypothalamus. Then we're going to talk about eating beyond metabolic needs because, we all eat way beyond probably what we need. So while there are these homeostatic mechanisms that are at play in the hypothalamus, there's other things going on that determine whether or not we eat. And we're going to look at cue potentiated eating and then swing into more on sensory pleasures of food, talk about a concept known as alliesthesia, which is looking at pleasure in terms of the usefulness of that stimulus, and a study that looked at affective state. So are you more likely to eat more when you are happier or than when you're angry? And then finally, a relatively recent study looking at how feeding releases endogenous opioids in humans. Okay, so we can think of a lot of motivation, and we also talk about this feeding, drinking, body temperature regulation as being maintenance functions in your body. So you have to maintain a certain body temperature. You should maintain a certain level of nutrients and a certain level of fluid level. So the body has that information. We know your body has information on how much blood glucose you have, how much insulin is out circulating in your body now, various other hormones, lipids, carbohydrates, protein, so on, have all this information out there. Fluid levels, how are you thirsty? Do you have low levels of fluids, high levels of fluids? Are you okay? And in the hypothalamus, there are detectors. Actually, there are also some in the body, but there are detectors. These are specialized cells, like neurons, specialized cells that can detect the state of the organism. So there are detectors that can detect fluid levels, that detect the size of your, fluid levels. They can detect glucose levels. They can detect insulin, glucose utilization that is being involving insulin. These are detectors. And these detectors can determine whether or not your body, the organism, is moving away from a level of homeostasis. That is a nice balance. And if the detectors pick up something going wrong here, your nutrients are going low, your fluid levels are going low, that will kick in another set of mechanisms, some of which could be in the hypothalamus, some could be in other areas, that results in a correctional mechanism. These can be both physiological and they can be behavioral. So if we think about, let's say your fluid levels drop. Let's say you're out exercising, okay? It's a hot day, you're exercising, you're running, you're sweating, and there would be detectors in your hypothalamus that would be able to detect water loss. You're losing some water, so there will be correctional mechanisms that will kick in. Some of those will be physiological, so certain hormones would be released. Hey, vasopressin, remember that one? Would be released that would cause water retention, and other behavioral mechanisms would kick in that would say, hey, I think I should go have a drink of water. Okay, so these are correctional mechanisms. There's also a satiety mechanism, and what that will do is shut down these, further inhibit the correctional mechanism. This whole process is known as maintaining homeostasis. Okay, now in terms of food, I thought I would keep this. We're just going to go over it briefly because it's okay to know. when you eat something, that goes into your digestive system, into the stomach, into the intestines, it's absorbed. And we can think of nutrients as being made up of three main components: carbohydrates or glucose, fats, and amino acids. Glucose is the primary source of energy that the body and the brain uses. And when glucose is absorbed from the digestive system, it goes immediately to the brain. The brain is a privileged organism. Everything goes there first. So it goes there first. Whatever is left after the brain has taken what it needs will also go to the muscles. Now, that's probably not as extreme as that, but the muscles will use energy as well. Anything left over beyond that then goes into storage. So this is immediate use for the brain, immediate use in the muscles, and anything left over then is stored. There is a short-term reservoir in your liver, and this, I think, only will contain about 500 calories, and I'm guessing, I should have checked before this, but it's a very small amount, and this is stored as something called glycogen. And it could be used very easily, converted back into glucose. So the conversion from glycogen to glucose is not that energetically demanding, which means it could be converted fairly quickly and then go to the brain. So if you need some energy, you need a quick energy boost, that's where you're going to go first. Anything beyond that, because this can only store a small amount of glucose as glycogen, will then go to adipose tissue and stored as fat. Now, getting fat or getting energy out of fat is a little bit more energy demanding or energetic. So to get from a triglyceride, you have to turn that to glycerol, and it has to go to glucose. This takes a bit more energy, a lot harder to do, and then that can also be used for energy to run the brain. Fatty acids, on the other hand, can be used directly to provide energy for the muscles. And when we look at fat obviously goes into fat initially. That can also be drawn upon for energy. Amino acids can also get thrown into adipose tissue for long-term energy storage, and but can also be used for protein synthesis and used for helping with muscles. Okay, one thing I'm not gonna move forward on this one, but because I just thought of a nice story. I came across a website through a podcast I listened to where it's called, the Fat Bear Challenge, and it's some national park in Alaska where they've been having a competition, literally having a bracket for picking the fattest bear as these bears get ready for hibernation, because they're just packing in the fat so that when they go into hibernation, they're going to have enough energy to make it through the winter or however long they're in hibernation. And there's this contest. It was to see who would be the fattest bear. I think it ends this weekend. I think the grand champion will be picked this weekend, but I might throw that website up for you. Okay, well, that was enough. That was a little diversion there, and we're going to come back, talk a little bit about the hypothalamus, and move on from there.